Hey guys, it's Piper, and I am finally making that story time I promised you guys about the time I was legally blind and could not draw. The reason it's taken so long, it's actually because I wanted to pair it with a sponsor for a safe product that would not make me go blind, partially for illustrative purposes, but mostly because I'm broke. I'm just gonna be honest. So I was waiting on them, but a bunch of the brands I approached just let my proposal expire instead of turning it down immediately. So this video has been in purgatory for over a month, only for them all to just leave me hanging like assholes. So anyway, I'm never doing that again. And just remember, in case this gets depressing, my vision is 20/20 right now. I am okay, so happy thoughts. For 2 years, I was visually impaired to the point where I could not draw anymore. I mean, I guess I technically could have, but it was such a struggle that I did not have the patience for it. I don't know if I was technically legally blind. Most people think that means that you're blind enough to where it impairs your life significantly, and that is fair, but actually, it's the government that determines what makes someone legally blind, and since healthcare is so expensive, I just never found out. It just sounds kind of like a misleading clickbait title if I was just like, well, YouTube, I was blind for 2 years and my life was over. I didn't want to do that. When I was a child, I allergy tested positive for parfum, also listed as fragrance on ingredient labels. That means all artificial scents make me sick. Parfum is in almost all perfumes, soaps, deodorants, shampoos, scented candles, cleaning products, but I can't talk, but you get the point, anything like that. Assume if it has a smell, I am allergic. Luckily, you don't encounter much of it as a child, and I never found out how long-term exposure affected me. I guess that's the drawback. When I was in my mid-teens, I grew out of my allergy, and I started wearing those products again. After all, there was no reason to go through the trouble and cash in and buy special products that were hypoallergenic, because they tend to cost more. But you have to be careful because some products claiming to be naturally scented with essential oils still have fragrance in them, which should be, illegal to advertise that, but whatever. And I'm also allergic to orris root, which is often found in perfumes as well. It's from, irises or something. I don't know. All I know is I'm allergic to it, so I hate it. It's evil. So anyway, when I was 19 or 20, I guess 20, because it was after all this shit that happened with Ashley. I don't know if you remember my video with Ashley, so this is, only a couple months after that. I just could not catch a break. I started taking over-the-counter allergy pills again. I didn't need them. I just wanted to humor my grandmother because she insisted I needed them because I had allergies. But anyway, then I ran out of the bottle and I was like, oh well. And I didn't go to the store to buy another bottle of something that I didn't need. Well, I still don't understand why, but my allergies came back. All of them. And I was wearing perfume at the time. Really, I have no idea how this happened, and no doctors ever explained it to me. So I guess I'll just never know. Anyway, I found out what my allergic reaction would be the hard way. It was hard to breathe, and I felt lightheaded, but I didn't pass out. But anyway, I was in denial. An allergy that horrible coming back because I gave in to my grandmother's whims, it just couldn't be true, you know? She would never do something like that to me, whether she intended for it to happen or not, right? She was a retired nurse. It had to be a coincidence. I couldn't afford all new toiletries. So I just ignored all logic, and not to mention instinct, and put on my only deodorant, which was scented, because I was insecure and worried that I would smell even though I did not smell. Very smart, Piper. Congestion. Later that day, I collapsed in my college's restroom. My ears were ringing and my vision was blurring, and I just kept thinking, no way, why now? It wasn't that much of a terrible allergy when I was a kid, but in the adult world, almost everything is scented. Women wear perfume, men wear aftershave, people light scented candles and they spray floral shit all over their linens. And then they hang those little pine scenty things to their mirrors in their cars, and you get the point. Almost every product in America, even men's products, have parfum or fragrance in them. Even fucking Barbasol shaving cream is scented. Don't believe me, dudes? Check the label. It is a pain in the ass. It's toward the end. And although, excuse me, hiccup. And although, 20% of Americans have some sensitivity to these products, these companies are in no rush to change their formulas, and nobody knows any better. My ears started to fill up with fluid, and after constant exposure to scented things, like assholes spraying perfume around me even though I asked them not to, and that kind of shit, it completely threw me off balance. I was almost always woozy, and worse, I just couldn't see straight. I was seeing double, and everything was a little bit blurry, too. Sometimes there was also vertigo, I'd say a couple times a day, but that didn't usually last long. Maybe a few minutes to a few hours, but as college continued and people were still anal pricks about their right to smell like they showered in vanilla extract and petroleum and still sit next to me in crowded lecture halls, because my disease is their inconvenience, my condition worsened to the point where I could no longer see remotely clearly, 90% of the time. It looked kind of like this, except moving. The peripheral images would just pan out and snap back in constantly. It was really annoying. And the worst consequence out of all of it was not just that my GPA was dropping, of course, but I just couldn't draw anymore. And not being able to draw was horrible. Drawing was, throughout my life, the thing that kept me sane. I started drawing when I was 10 years old to give myself something to do at recess. My parents were divorcing and I was sent to a new school. I had approached every single student in my 6th grade class asking them to be my friend, but I was the weird kid, so I was always dismissed and often ridiculed. I had no idea I was autistic. No one else did. I was too smart to be autistic. Blah blah. That's a story for another day. So either the other kids thought I was annoying, which is what they said, or they were afraid they would get bullied by association for hanging out with me. So I taught myself how to use drawing as a healthy outlet for venting all the pain I was going through. A few years passed, and people started to notice how skilled I was as an artist for someone my age. And once I transferred away from that K-12 Christian private school, well, actually I got expelled, but that's a story for another day too, and I went to a normal high school. Finally, I was known for something new, the artistic one, and a few other things, but anyway, I didn't talk much, but I drew constantly. Art became tied in with my identity. I was a kid who grew up under constant criticism from peers and family alike, and I was finally getting positive reinforcement for something. My art wasn't just something I did anymore, it was who I was. So when I had that allergic reaction, I had to give up the one thing about myself that I liked and was proud of because I couldn't see. It was completely beyond my control, and I had control issues anyway, so it was driving me insane. I was the artist, and now what was I? I was nothing. I was nothing because I couldn't do the one thing I was meant to do. I was so upset that I actually trashed a lot of my old art because I was so angry that I couldn't draw anymore. A few pieces survived. I keep them all in one folder. And I wanted to do art for a living too. You know that visual novel I'm working on right now? The very thing I'm working on in the background, actually? I started working on it in 2010. Only it was intended to be a cartoon or a comic book and the plot was different, but I had to put it down because I couldn't finish it. I wrote some scripts for it, but that was kind of frustrating too because, you don't need to see your fingers to type. But when you can't even see the fucking screen, how was I supposed to know what I was doing? I also did really poorly in college during that time. In order to see the whiteboard in class, I had to cover one eye with my hand. Usually that at least helped enough so that I could function, but sometimes it wasn't enough because it was too doubled or too dizzy or too blurry or all of those things. And not to mention working with one hand was kind of hard, and I never got an eye patch because I didn't want to draw attention to myself or answer questions. I didn't even tell anyone in my family that I couldn't see. I just didn't want that attention. I didn't want to deal with their emotions. Community college wasn't so hard, to be honest, but when I transferred to a university, it was rough. I couldn't afford a dorm, so I had to be driven there 40 minutes away. That meant I had to schedule all of my classes on the same days, so I was spending 11 hours on campus per day, so it was exhausting anyway. But then, of course, there were my vision problems and my ADHD, so basically, I failed history, I got a D in philosophy. He gave me a D to be merciful. I actually should have failed that class. I dropped out of sociology because I couldn't handle it. I got a B in biology because it was all high school level shit that I already knew, and a pass in math. If you saw my pity party, you already know that I started out with remedial math in college because I hadn't taken a math class since I was 16 and in high school. Since it was a pass or fail course and it was my first semester at a new university, my GPA was calculated based on a B, a D, and an F. I was placed on academic probation and my self-worth plummeted. I never told any teachers about my vision problem, partly because I'm socially inept, and also my university required a letter from your doctor to get help. And I could not afford one of those, so I went to the school hospital and the urgent care center throughout this struggle, but both told me they could only drain my ears if the condition was permanent, and that my ears would eventually drain on my own. And they also got me out of there, really quickly, like I was a burden, so I didn't bother. I was too stressed to try to explain it if they seemed to not care anyway. At the urgent care center, they prescribed me with Flonase, and my condition actually worsened. Earlier this year, 2018, I saw my childhood allergist, and he told me Flonase actually has a rose scent in it, so no wonder I got worse. I was literally shooting an allergen up my nose every day. What kind of fucked up irony is that? P.S. He told me this is incurable, so if I go blind again, I'm fucked for a couple of years again. Woohoo! My vision did eventually return to me, not all at once, but slowly as the fluid in my ears drained, which took way longer than the doctors acted like it would. And once I noticed my vision was turning to normal, I found myself unable to draw for another reason. I had forgotten how to do it! Even things that used to be easy to me, completely effortless, like portrait sketches, were difficult because I just couldn't line anything up anymore. I guess it wasn't in my muscle memory or something. I don't know how it works. Everything was at least slightly off, and I would just get more and more frustrated, and the more frustrated I was, the harder it was to draw, and it just fed into each other like a big cycle of hell. And I ended up quitting altogether for several years, unless you count the great 6-month bender of 2015, which I don't because I don't remember drawing the few things I did. I just started drawing again in 2016. To this day, I still don't think I'm as good as I once was. I have more skills, but my art just isn't as free as it was before, you know what I mean? I don't know how to explain it. I guess maybe it's my obsession with anatomy, or maybe it's a lack of comfort. I feel like I'm not a real artist, and I don't know why I feel like I'm not a real artist. It's just how it is, I guess. Someday I'll probably get there if I keep working at it and don't go blindish again, but that was depressing, and I don't want to talk about it anymore, and you probably don't want to hear about it anymore. So I'm just gonna cut it off here instead of rambling, whining, and bitching. Please rate and subscribe and have a great day, and maybe hit the notification bell. See ya!